Okay.
Welcome everybody to the Coaching the Flourish podcast. I'm your host, John Andrew Williams. Today we have Scott Stoll, who also is in our Biz Launcher with Tony. They're in the same cohort. Scott has a practice. You were in the education community. You were a coach, like a sport coach.
I still am. Yeah, still a sports coach. Started yesterday. Actually, yesterday I had my first contact face-to-face with high school kids. We got there the first day together, and there was so much love, and I got emotional right away. I saw these kids. I was like, I just have missed you guys so much, and it was really a nice moment. So yeah, we're back to recovery as far as that goes.
Right. I feel like as a teacher, you never really grow up. That's the secret of working, right? You're always on the latest trends, and you always know,
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm definitely a 57-year-old teenager still, and that's what keeps it. That's what helps keep that rapport and the connection with the kids.
Little known fact: when I was teaching Latin, I also read I read In Touch, and there's another magazine so I knew all the gossip that was happening in that world. It was useful. Extremely. It doesn't take long. It's quick. Now with all the social media and TikTok and everything, I mean, it's quick. It's amazing how integrated and in networked this Generation Z is. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. Anyway, Scott, here we are. So, Scott, we got to know each other.
Before we start,
just finishing your 2.0.
We've still got 3 or 4 weeks to go, and we're finishing up with our 2.0 class with just an incredible group of women that are teaching me so much every week.
Nice. What's it like to finish? Now you've done the 1.0 and the 2.0. What would you say are the differences between the 1.0 and the 2.0?
Well, 1.0 is obviously it's, your mind is just like overwhelmed with concepts and ideas. You have to kind of reprogram your way of thinking and speaking, listening, and there are just so many new things that come up. And so, everyone that I would talk to about 2.0 beforehand, they would say, well, it's a lot of the same concepts, but you just go a lot deeper. That's certainly true, but it's definitely enlightening to get involved with hope theory and some of these other ideas that, to be honest, I was not very familiar with, but now I'm buying books by Brene Brown and Carol Zwick and all these. And, I hear about Martin Seligman and one of the ladies in our class, Britt, she's at Penn University. And so she works alongside of him. And so it's just, it's amazing.
Right. Yeah. And Britt's been, she's incredible as an editor. Was the primary editor of the 1.0 books and now the 2.0. It's astounding to look back and see how all of these pieces have really come together and how much has come together over the past 10 years, in doing this work. Scott, love to get your story. Love to get a little bit more into your story. You came at this as an educator in the academic life coaching program. Let's start in. So how did you get involved in education, and then how did you find your way to academic life coaching?
Well, when I was in college as an undergraduate back in the 80s, I was an English major and a Spanish major. So I spent some time studying abroad in Spain. And that was the first experience that I had actually teaching. I was involved with English as a second language classes over there. And I still remember very clearly my first experience teaching, and some of the feelings that I have had actually today, a lot of nerves. And actually my wife was in that very class. So that was my first exposure to teaching, and I really loved it. I had, to be honest, when I graduated from college a year later, I had no plan at all. I really was, when you think about the expression, follow your passion, I was 100% following my passion. I had no master plan. So I decided to go back to Spain. And I spent another 2 years there and living in Madrid and teaching. And so that's how I got involved with teaching English as a second language. And then I came back to the United States and kind of continued doing that. I tried to kind of get involved in the corporate world or be a professional at that time, and there's just no way I can. It wasn't just, so it just didn't work out. So I ended up, I really was, in some ways, I guess ahead of my time. I ended up with 3 part-time jobs teaching English as second language at different colleges. I worked in the private sector teaching English, actually in the hotel and restaurant industry, and then teaching some Spanish also. And so I've kind of been doing this for almost 25, 30 years of just kind of doing 3 or 4 different side gigs and bringing it all together and, defending personal freedom and being able to do, if I want to go out and ride my bike, being able to do that. And then as later on when my kids were born, being able to spend more time with them. And then that's how I got involved with coaching sports was, when my kids were growing up, coaching them on their soccer teams. And I have to be honest, I was a terrible coach. I made so many mistakes, but I learned from people. I saw people around me that were doing it the right way, and they were supportive, and they were just always clapping and giving positive reinforcement and taking these young kids, 10, 11, 12 years old, and just being supportive. And I was looking at them going, wow, my way doesn't work. That works. And so, it grew from there. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been coaching at the high school level, cross country and track. And what I came in contact with over the years have been lots of high school kids that are just confused, feeling anxiety, some cutting and depression and just all these things that come up. And I realized that I was not prepared to deal with one of these things, but I wanted to try to help and be there. And I realized that sometimes a male figure is really important for a lot of these kids. They don't all have male figures in their lives. And so that's, kind of what led me eventually to life coaching.
Good for you. So you met your wife when you were in undergrad?
I did. I had been in Spain for about a month, and I mean, it really is something that you could make a movie out of. We were at a mixer where we try to, the Spanish people are trying to meet Americans so they can practice their English, and the Americans are supposed to do the same thing. And I looked over across the room and I saw this woman, and I said, wow. I said, if I ever get married, I wanted to be with someone like that. And it was really just a leap of, my heart just took me, and we became friends and maintained a friendship that was actually completely platonic for a long time. And then in 1994, I dropped everything here in the United States and moved to Seville, and we got married there, and spent the next 10 years of my life there. So it was about 13 years total that I spent in Spain. And I still have a big part of my life, and my memories and my heart is still there.
Oh, that's amazing. I love Spain. We took, so Moise and I, we talked about living there for a couple of years. And we found out this is this is like storybook-esque as well. We were literally packing, to go to Madrid for a 2-week trip to do reconnaissance work to see about schools for our 2 girls. And we found out that we were going to have Julian, our third, literally like the night before we were leaving on the airplane.
Wow.
And so this whole trip in Spain, there's this side conversation going on between me and Moise, is this, it's early, what are we doing? Are we going to move here or not? So it was like having our girls were so into it. We love Spain. Madrid's gorgeous.
Great. Yeah.
And then we went to, and And we thought about
Oh,
living
Malaga, yeah, it's
in
great. Yeah,
Switzerland.
it really is. And they're great people. They just actually, they're extremely peace loving. It's not a violent country in any way. The most violence you'll ever encounter is right here with the tongues, because they are very verbal. They love to just socialize and talk and argumentative and talk about politics and passionate. And like you'll see in Italy and lots of countries in Southern Europe. And it was so valuable for me, because I really came out of my shell in a lot of ways and learned to talk and defend my ideas and in another language. I mean, I would go for weeks and weeks at a time without even speaking English at all. So it's helped me a lot in this process as well in life coaching.
Right. Yeah, my MCC mentor coach was a Spaniard, and he was fun. He really was. Gorka is his name. And
From the Basque country?
yeah, from where's he from? Like up north.
Bilbao?
I think near Madrid. But
near Madrid. Okay.
yeah, he said, but anyway, we got Spain. Yeah, and we have memories, and we went through Barcelona when we were in undergrad and would stay there for a week. It's lovely, and see just it just was an amazing place. Back to where you are now.
Yeah.
And building your life coaching practice. What do you see as from a teacher coach perspective? If you were to describe academic life coaching to another educator, what would come to mind, or what would be the highlights of how you see academic life coaching integrating with education?
Well, I guess, the first thing and the main thing, which would be that I would really want to talk about is, you learn how to listen. Because, kids are, they live in a world now where they're just being, they're having a lot of ideas forced upon them. They're being told what to do. We hear the phrases helicopter parents and bulldozer parents, and just it's coming from all angles, and the kids a lot of times are not being allowed to give their voice and have people listen in an empathetic way. So that's I think would be some of the messages to teachers and parents. And of course, it seems like, oh yeah, sure, that just makes sense, but not everyone's doing it. And so, out of that, then help them obviously, clarify for them, the learn, be, do model, and try to integrate that within their lives. It's easier said than done though, because, like going back to one of the questions you asked me before, the difference. I mean, I had to reset my brain in so many ways when I started 1.0, because when I first heard about life coaching, I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to do that, because I have all kinds of great advice for everyone, and everyone should listen to me what I have to say, because I have all this wisdom, and especially I'm a little bit older. And then they're like, well, actually, it's about listening, and it's about going up from level 1 to level 2 listening. And I think that's what a lot of us in the 1.0, when we're going through that, we find ourselves talk, and it's not asking the questions and not doing the listening. So it's just been such a valuable experience and humbling, to go through it and realize, like, wow, I really was just not listening that closely. And it was just all these years. And so I've tried to really integrate that more into actually a lot of the coaching that I do now with kids is, what would a successful season look like for us this year? What does success mean? Instead of, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run this we're going to run this many miles, and we're going to stretch, and we're going to do this, and listen to me because I have all the information and I have all the knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's a completely different view of uh, leadership, I think is maybe the best word to use for it,
Mm-hmm.
where it's not, the leader isn't someone saying, okay, this is how it's going to be, but the leader is someone who is able to listen deeply and understand, oh, this is where you are. Okay. Where do you want to go? And how does this align with the common vision that everyone has? Like if so, it feels more like, I don't know, mental vision work
Mm-hmm.
uh, than like telling work. How have you seen it transform the way that you work with your athletes now? Because there's been a break with quarantine, and now you get to reintegrate. What are you noticing is different about how you're approaching them, even after this quarantine, having gone through a couple more months of coach training?
Well, I have stayed in contact with a lot of the kids, but it's been mostly in the form of questions. What role does running play in your life right now? Um, how has your definition of family or community changed? And because I always did, when I first started coaching this, I remember I would get all my kids together at the beginning of the season and say, look, from here on out, starting today, we're a family. And we're going to go on this weird journey. I don't even know where we're going to go, but it's going to be really interesting. And we may not even be successful. So now, in the isolation a lot of kids have had to go through, and adults, I mean, we're all struggling with it and trying to redefine what it means to be together as a community, as family, and exercise in some way, I think, is playing an important role as well, because those endorphins and the valuable physical responses that we get from that, I mean, at this point, they're more important than ever. And so I've asked, without pushing, I've asked, like, what role is exercise going to play in this life that we're living right now?
So much of life coaching comes from sports psychology, where it looks at, you have Tim Galloway's inner game of tennis.
Mm-hmm.
You have this, I think what, even the word coaching is taken directly from the athletic realm. Where do you see those overlaps, or where have you as a sport coach, like where do you see the overlaps between life coaching and sports psychology, and how does that translate into a student athlete performing better?
Well, visualizing and thinking about, that your future self, for example, because there's definitely a lot of overlap there. Kids are, especially as they're growing up, they're really trying to define what their role is going to be. A lot of times it's, who am I going to be inside of this school? What person am I going to be? Am I going to be the nerdy computer kid? Am I going to be the jock? Am I going to be the rebel? And then, what personality am I what's my archetype going to be within this school? And so I personally haven't really enjoyed going along with the non-traditional athletes. So the person who's really struggling to define that sports role. They realize they're not big enough to play football. Maybe they don't even like football. They don't even like to hit people, because I've seen a lot of really big kids that are 250 pounds. They love to work out, but they don't want to hit anyone, and everyone's like, oh, you'd be a great football player. Like you'd be a great tackle on your team. And that's not them. Just because they're physically built doesn't mean that, you know, that that's within their heart or their head to do that. So, you know, with running, it's more of that person who is basically like, I don't think I'm an athlete at all. But if there was some kind of sport, I'd like to do it. And so then it's to let them come in that dynamic and really grow and realize that, wow, this is, you know, I'm getting a lot from it. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting faster. I've made these great friends, and I'm starting to define and have this vision that I'm creating for myself. And this is what I could even do with this in the future, a year or 2 years down the road. And so I'm starting to set some goals, and I would like to achieve those goals. And usually, you know, a lot of runners are distance runners, are academically, they're usually, as a group, they're pretty high achievers. And they're really motivated. They really commit. They're planners. And so it's taking that and then, okay, you know, what do we want to do with this? And so, you know, I'm still integrating some of these things that I'm learning in life coaching into my role as a sports coach. But I know it's definitely helped me become a better coach. And I just was watching the inner game of tennis a few weeks ago, and I learned a lot from that as well, because, you know, it's like breaks it down into these really small little pieces, instead of focusing on like, I have to be a great tennis player today, or I have to be a great runner today. So I also coach track, and that's a different type of, you know, it's not really, there are a lot of overlap, but it's not the same. So what I've started doing in track is to say, like, if I have a high jumper, I might say, all right, today during this meet, you only are going to focus on this one thing, and it's just your launch step. So that's that last step they take before they go up to go over the bar. So right now you're only going to think about that. And I don't care if you get last place today, it doesn't even matter. That's not even important. It's just to think about this one thing. Because what confuses athletes a lot is when you're saying, okay, now your warm up has to be this, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do this other thing. And then don't forget, like right when you jump, you know, like your arms have to be there, and then your head has to be back. And then, you know, it ends up getting jumbled. And a lot of times that's just a recipe for a lack of success. And then, you know, then all the mental things that come after that.
Right. Hey. There's much right now. You know, the distance runner thing, you know, running distance, you know, Matt on our team, he's trying to break a sub 4 mile. He's a semi-professional runner.
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
he should be having this discussion right now, not me.
Well,
That's incredible. Sub 4.
Yeah, he's trying to break. So he did a time
Wow.
trial. He got 4:09 on a time trial.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's
How old is he?
And a lot of it too is just there's this element of, you know, Moist ran track. I mean, she's popping in and out. She didn't know I was on the webinar. She ran track. So she ran track.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so she ran track at Brown, and then that's
Wow.
that's part of how we met, was through sport. And so in the hiring process, when she found out that Matt was a semi-pro distance runner, she goes, you know what kind of people like distance runners are, you know? And I wrestled, and I always really liked the cross country. I always felt like I fit in with the cross country, because the wrestlers and cross country people, you know, they would, I mean,
there's a lot of overlap. You're the
you're the ones that don't mind physical pain somehow.
Right.
Built that way. Or embrace it in different ways. But yeah, no, Matt's amazing with that as well. Where
How
do
old
you?
is he?
What was that?
How old is Matt?
27, 28.
Oh, okay. Oh, so he's still at a great age to get under 4 minutes.
He was trying to make the Olympics,
Wow.
And yeah, he was trying to, he still is. I mean, they moved it back a year. He's trying to make the Olympics for the marathon or half marathon,
Right.
some distance, some long distance like that. Um, no, he's intense. Where do you see the how? I mean, what I'm always like really interested in is the overlap between that and what I think feel like is missing in our society is that we as adults don't often push ourselves to physical limits, and I feel like we need that. What are your thoughts on the connection between like mind and body, like between the pushing of physical limits and also the kind of push that it takes to start a business in coaching or to do anything that in this realm?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's one of the phrases also that's always resonated with me, beginning in 1.0 or scary goals. And, those, the challenges, the physical challenges that you can make with yourself. I really do believe that there's your self-esteem and your image, your self-image, it just gets altered and changed because you realize that these things that seemed so far out of reach, when people think about like doing a marathon or even a half marathon, which is already, pretty significant. It just seems so out of reach, and so, I don't know. And, maybe I should just sit here on the couch and keep eating Doritos and drinking Kool-Aid. And then when you set these small goals of, if you get with the right people and you do it in the right way, and, you're like, we're going to start really small and just walk a mile, just walk 1 mile today. And it starts to grow. And then absolutely, you go, well, if I can do this, why couldn't I have my own business? Why couldn't I become a life coach? And there definitely is tons of overlap. And that's why I really do think that sports is a valuable tool. I think it's great. I think it's really essential for kids, for adolescents and kids growing up. I think it's during that period in their life, it's really important. I could have easily, when I got into life coaching, I could have easily probably gotten into either executive coaching and who knows, I might at some point, or wellness. But I just felt like, at this point right now, it was important to have this knowledge that I've kind of gained through sports coaching to try to help and be a part of kids' lives when they're at this really, really critical phase in their lives. And they're going through these teenage years and even into college. So that's kind of how I ended up on the academic side.
Me too. I mean, it's we're kindred spirits trying to help young people and critical points in time. And when you're in it, I feel like there's an element of you see like how much those conversations can change a trajectory of decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and then added on all to that is, just everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Some of the kids that I've really felt the closest to have been African-American or mixed race. And that was really, it called me even more that it's even more important. And, this is what's happened the last 3 or 4 weeks is, we've, a lot of people we've just had to really think about this and kind of do a reset. We need to, and have a discussion. And, I still remember Ferguson very clearly. I still remember Rodney King back in the, when that blew up and, it's been, but there's been a lot of level 1 listening. And, so, I think about all the high school kids and pre-high school, middle school kids that are doing sports, and a lot of them are Hispanic or African American, and a lot are not. But it just reminds me even more that that we're needed as coaches to to be a part of their journey also. And to, you know, I mean, I get so much understanding myself, and I've been taught so much and learned so much from kids that have a different perspective.
Right. There's been, I feel like there's been a huge leap forward in racial justice understanding that's happened in the white community over the past couple of weeks. Huge awareness of blind spots that I think I feel, you know, a lot of feelings with this, but just this seeing the shifts, which I think are some pretty monumental shifts that have happened in the past couple of weeks. And I think a lot of it, from a coach's standpoint, like really understanding this idea of growth mindset and not being defensive, but understanding, okay, this is what do I need to learn? How can I be an ally to fight for racial justice and be anti-racist, not just neutral, but how can I be actively anti-racist is a new concept that I feel like is floating around. And I think as, you know, white males, it's, you know, I didn't understand. I mean, you just can't get to that level of understanding.
I think, you know, the other thing also is that we're learning is that there are a lot of really good people that want to see change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that people are so bad, it's that we have these systems and institutionalized systems that are, it's like for this huge sector of the population, it's just not working. And, you know, you talked about growth mindset, but it's, you know, the fixed mindset that with a lot of people that is keeping them from getting to that place where, you know, they're not defensive. And hopefully we can start to see, you know, the perspective of other people. I mean, you know, I just think about my, you know, my own experience when I was growing up and driving. If I got pulled over by the police, you know, I mean, it didn't have any ramifications beyond that for me. But, you know, for the same person of color to have to go through that experience, the outcome more than likely is probably, there's a high probability that's going to be different. And, you know, for so many years, maybe there was a part of me that knew that intellectually, you know, but again, I would, you know, just keep using that same metaphor. It was level 1, it wasn't a level 2. And, you know, the shift that you're talking about, I think is as a society, we're, in a way, we're going to level 2, you know, we're at level 1.5 right now or something.
There's a lot of work to do. I mean,
there's a lot of work to do, absolutely. But at least it's out there. And it's
right. I mean, we'll see how comfortable people are abolishing school districts, things like that. You know, we'll see when absolutely. Property values start to get, I mean, it's so ingrained that I feel like the work ahead of us is just, it's massive. But I also feel like coaching will play a role. Coaching is playing a role in this. Let's say someone just starting out in their coach training journey, what advice would you give someone just starting a 1.0?
That's a good question. Perseverance, I would say, is really important because, you know, it is tough in the beginning. It's, you know, I talked about it before, you know, I mean, I realized one day, I'm like, wow, I have to retrain myself to listen in a different way. The other thing I think is stop worrying about success, you know, stop trying to work toward a good outcome. Stop thinking that, you know, you're okay. One day you know, you have this future vision for yourself. I'm going to be a life coach in the future and I'm going to charge, $60 an hour, $100 an hour, $200 an hour, whatever it ends up being. So in order, if I'm going to do that, I have to have this session that is just, wow, knock everyone's socks off. And I have to be the star, and I have to, and by the end of the session, you know, it has to be like really successful. And if not, then that's not a successful session. And so you kind of have to leave that behind, and it's not easy because, you know, we think about value and what we expect to get from this. And I think, you know, Raj touched on this last week, and your talk with her, you know, is you just stop trying to fix everything and stop trying to create this scenario. But resilience is probably, perseverance and resilience are probably the most important words that come up in my mind, because there are, you know, it does go up and down, and then, but there's that great opportunity to grow as you come back up.
Right. Yeah, there's another, I feel like there are a cascade of realizations that fall on people. And there's a lot of, I just can keep coming back to the word of trust. You have to trust
Absolutely.
yourself, you have to trust the client process. I think that there is so much from school that gets accepted. I don't know what the word is, almost adopted by people, in the sense of, you know, how value is created in the quality of your answers, not in the quality of your questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's the big shift that almost everyone has to go through. I went through it. I mean, everyone.
The quality of the question versus the quality of the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're touching on something right now, because, you know, if there's anything, the essence of this, and in some ways, is that the beauty of this whole process is in the question.
Right.
And it's, you know, you could put that on the front of the textbooks that everyone receives, is, you know, it's the question. It's the question, because, but again, we're not trained like that. We're trained to be profound and have all blah, 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 you know, and and I have all this, you know, like I said before, I have all this great information, and I'm super intelligent, by the way, and listen to what I have to say. And it is really amazing, and with kids, but everyone. I mean, I think we all do it. Is our conversations that we have with people at the supermarket start to change more, and when that conversation in the supermarket goes to you asking questions, people just, like, they light up.
Right.
And I think the feeling that they have afterwards is they really appreciate you more, because you've asked them a question and given them an opportunity to just talk, and all you're doing is listening.
Mm. Yeah, you can tell there's a certain quality in that listening. I feel like that's what young people, I mean, people in general, but especially young people, are not used to, because when they interact with adults, there's always this defensive, or if you're asking me questions, adults are used to asking questions that have a very specific answer in mind, and then they get judged on the quality of their response. That a lot of times young people, when they're working with a coach, they have to learn, okay, there's no real right or wrong answer here. You know, like, it's my answer. And what is my authentic answer? They often don't know, because they're not used to it.
Absolutely. I mean, you asked also, you know, before, what would be, you know, thoughts for a 1.0 student that's just starting out. And the other thing, and it's related to what we're just talking about, is, you know, like, you're not there to lead the client to this great piece of insight that you happen to have. You're not there to guide them towards that. And it's taken a while, but I mean, I've had some just incredible teachers. Carol now is my teacher, and Hannah, and I've had Teresa, who was on your a few weeks ago. I mean, they're just amazing people, and they've taught us all that through these last several months, and it's just been it's great because they've been so patient with us also, and and we share a lot. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that because you have some incredible instructors, and we feel that profound gratitude. I know.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. So Scott, how can families, students, what's the best way for them to find you, work with you? What do you have?
Well, as a result of our Biz Launcher class, I do have a website now, and that's up and running, and so they can find me on the internet. And also, as a result of our Biz Launcher, I've got an Instagram. I have a grand total of 4 followers, I think, as of right now. But I'm at and a Twitter. So that's for sure for me. That's my weakness is social media. I'm not a product of that generation, so I don't gravitate naturally to social media every day. It's I probably look at it more as a tool, that I'm trying to figure out and utilize. But those are ways, and then probably the good old-fashioned way, just referrals and word of mouth.
So Scott, what we're going to do is we're going to get, there'll be a link on the blog to your site. And I just want to really appreciate, just in the Biz Launcher and everything that, because we got to work together through the Biz Launcher. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for how much of just empathetic and how much of a sweetheart and how much you genuinely care about the other person. You could hear that in the way that you interacted, in the way that you were coaching, that your care and concern for other comes through so naturally as a coach. And it's exactly what young people need right now. There's so many forces that want to distract or have them judge themselves in certain ways. And this coaching world, this coaching model is like a balm of healing, and you bring that. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And I know I actually speak for a lot of people when I just want to, well, first off, I just want to say, I love you. I just have really loved this series that you've done, this resilience series. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say, it was a lifeline that all of us needed while we were trying to figure out everything that was going on with these, you think about when you and I were together in that Biz Launcher, when we started, it was 3 months ago. Some days it seems like it was 3 years ago, right? Time took on this weird, it wasn't passing the same way that it normally does. And a lot of people, a lot of us were readjusting everything and confused and anxious. And I was, the funny thing is I had taken my wife, she went to Spain. She was stuck almost the entire time there in Spain. And so I was here alone. And I really decided that I wanted this to be, within this context, as positive of an experience as it could. And I knew that I had some things, the track season that I had all planned out for the spring was taken away from me. And so I readjusted, and I just threw myself into life coaching and coach training EDU. And I got involved with these webinars, and I started doing, some power hours and some other, and the Biz Launcher. And it was so important in my life. And I really am grateful that you reached out and decided and understood that we needed this, because as I said, I know I'm not speaking alone here. It's really been important. And you and Ashley and your whole team have just done a really fantastic job. And just to see people, I still think about one of the people, Sam, when I saw the day that he was on with you, and you could just see the lightning bolts just like come through the screen because this guy has got so much energy, and he's just, you can tell he's one of these people that just jumps out of bed in the morning and is just so excited to see what the world has waiting for him. And, you know, Hayden, who I had seen a long, long time ago on a YouTube post, and I was like, who is this guy? He's amazing. And so to meet these people on this level, it's really been very, very enriching.
Appreciate that, Scott, deeply. It's for the sake of the mission, and I feel like that's the calling. There is massive work that needs to be done, and now that people in this community are equipped with tools like empathetic listening, direct communication, ideas of growth mindset, you know, especially when there are challenges like this that come up. I feel like this is the time when those things they're not just theory, but it's okay, what tangible action steps come out of this inner work. And I think I feel like that's what you're pointing to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love you, Scott. I love this community. This is just like, this to me is, you know that feeling when you're doing your life's work and you know for sure that it's the work that you're meant to be doing? And there's no doubt in your mind that the conversation you're having, the one-on-one conversation you're having is what you were born to do. That's the feeling that I know you know that feeling. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I know many other people in this community know this feeling too. To me, that's what it's about. It's about being of service, the best, you know, in how do the best we can, show up in service, do something.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, and you just touched on it. You have this feeling in your heart, like, you know, this is where you're supposed to be, right? When you're doing this, you know exactly, like, absolutely, this is why I was put here, was to do this. But going back to the academic side, you know, I mean, you come in contact with a lot of kids that it's the opposite of that. You know, there's a lot of confusion. You know, you probably went through it. I went through it. You know, when I was growing up, it's a natural part of, you know, you're formulating your personality, your identity. It took me a long time. I felt like I was floating around in the world. And fortunately, I met this amazing woman who's been my wife. And then I had 2 children. And that's when I was, okay, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so this academic side now is an extension of that. But, you know, when you see kids that are like really confused and just trying to figure it out, it makes our mission so much more important. And, you know, again, you know, I'm a baby in this, but I look at, you know, all these people, these great people that you brought in here through this series. And, you know, it reconfirms that that idea that absolutely this is what we're supposed to be doing. Plus, you know, 2 months ago, no one had even heard of Zoom. No one even knew what Zoom was. But you know, you've been doing Zoom for years, and so it's like, wow, like there was a reason that we've been doing all of this. It was preparing for this moment that we're going through right now.
Scott, we gotta end. We could go for hours. We gotta.
Can I ask you one question before we leave?
Yes, go for it.
Quick. So what colliding values have you experienced during this COVID-19 phase?
What I see, and this is the constant balance, is you know, we have little ones, and it's the balance between pouring into them and then making sure that the pouring into the Coach Training EDU community.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that to me is those are the values. But I feel like the secret to all of this working is exercise, like
Mm-hmm.
physical exercise.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the healing balm of all, you know. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to design ways to get that almost every day. So
What's
I'm
the
feeling
super
like
value?
mountain bike season's here. And when I take my daughter to gymnastics, there's a gym. I hit the pool. It's the most efficient workout I can probably design. And I feel like a rock star right now, honestly.
Great. Oh, that's good to hear that.
But it's because of exercise. The lockdown was brutal. Trails were closed. Gyms were closed. It was brutal. But now I feel like we're coming out of it on the other side stronger. And the coach training EDU community, I feel like right now, I feel like there is increased clarity and increased motivation for us to continue to push for the vision of what we see, education and these fields of wellness and corporate worlds can be like. It feels like just Zoom's a perfect metaphor. We've been at this for a while, and now it feels like the rest of the world is coming over and seeing it more similar to us. And that's a deeply fulfilling feeling. And I feel like we're just getting started.
That's great. That's a great way to end too. Well, thank you for having me today.
Yeah. Scott, it's a pleasure. And community, thank you. Sorry to get to Q&A. Just felt like it just went. But we'll see you on Thursday. This has been another episode of the Coaching to Flourish podcast. Thanks, everyone.